the reasons I fell in love with doing improv in particular. It's a unique art form in the sense that it's one of the few things that you can do where you are creating something on stage that is also the finished product at the same time. So the actors on stage who are improvising are coming up in real time with what they're trying to figure out to do, and you're watching that process of them thinking through what they're going to do and seeing it, which is the actual thing that you're watching. I really believe, and I've made this case in a lot of different contexts, that this creates like a special kind of relationship between the audience and the people on stage, that you then, as an audience, are part of that process, right? You're part of that creation because you're leaning in, you care how it turns out in a way that might be different than if I were to just say, oh, I scripted this and I'm presenting it to you in this way. Why am I blathering on about improv, other than that you should take my class next spring, is because I think that that actually has a lot to do with design as well, and a particular way that we think about design, that we should be, hopefully, thinking about how the people who are actually going to use the things that we design, whether they're buildings or products or clothing or landscapes, how those people actually interact with that. We should have that at the heart and the center of what we're doing. We should think about them not as sort of just like the end deliverable of it, but actually as part of that process in some ways. Which is all my, hopefully, good segue into our next speaker, because she is an award-winning and well-known designer for thinking and being at the forefront of what is a person, a guest's, a recipient's use of a space. So Michelle Esplin is the principal and director of interiors at the Cunningham Group of Architects here in Minneapolis. She specializes in hospitality design, and to give you a sense of how good she is at this, under her leadership there, the Cunningham Group won Top Interior Design Firm of 2019 from NEWH, which I kept wanting to say NIHU. So that's a big deal. So she is this is the applause line. She is a graduate of the University of Minnesota Program of Interior Design. So please help me in welcoming to the stage our next speaker, Michelle Esplin.
I am an interior designer. 20 years ago, when I graduated and got my first job in my career, my desktop did not have search engines. Email was only for internal communication, and our cell phones did not have cameras. I didn't even want to use my cell phone because it was 65 cents a minute. I remember asking myself, what am I going to do to stay inspired, to stay creative? And I found these books that really felt like I was drawn to them. They're colorful, there's lots of different topics, and I became obsessed with gathering them. Every year for Christmas and my birthday, I asked for one. For several years, I stacked them on my shelf. And I loved looking at them all together in my bookshelf at my desk. My coworkers loved using them. We spent a lot of time paging through these books. But eventually I realized that looking at professional photographs of a two-dimensional environment wasn't quite doing it, and they became dusty. At the same time, I found this quote from Mark Twain: "There is no such thing as a new idea. We simply take a lot of old ideas and put them into a sort of a mental kaleidoscope." Mental kaleidoscope. That really resonated with me. About 10 years ago, I decided that I really needed to embark on travel and be in the space and really understand what it felt like to be in these spaces. I drove my family and my friends crazy talking about what it felt like to be in the space, critiquing every little detail. Was it the window aligned with the church beyond that made sense? Is it the landscape that meets the building, causing harmony? Is that tile pattern help or hinder what it feels like to be in that space? And all of those details, looking at them with my mind's eye, added to my mental kaleidoscope. And not having photographs of everything to look back to was actually a blessing. I found that I had to remember what I saw and take that and extract it into something new. It gave me the ability to curate from my mental kaleidoscope. Then came along these obsessive ways to search the internet. And I found a paradigm shift in how we spoke about design. Instead of acting as if we were in the space, and talking about what it felt like, we started searching for design in a two-dimensional environment. And that brought me back to where I started in the first place, and it didn't feel right. One way that can backfire is in a situation we had images similar to this, and we showed a client what we thought their restaurant should look like. We thought, this is great. They're going to understand where we're going. They feel proud that they hired us. They can understand the vibe, the mood, the texture. They raised their hand and they said, if I wanted that design, why didn't I hire that person? That hurt, and I haven't forgotten about it. At the same time, I was an emerging leader and was thinking of talent recruitment, employee career pathing. How am I going to tie all this together? How am I going to understand that everybody sees design the same way I do and my firm does, three-dimensionally, not two-dimensionally? And it came up with an exercise that I ask you guys to try sometime. You close your eyes and you ask yourself, what does this space feel like? And you don't worry about what it looks like. If you ask yourself what it feels like, is the ceiling high or is it low? Is the sun beaming on your face or does it feel dark and distant? Does it feel heavy or does it feel soft? If you ask yourself those things, you will build that intuition. You will build that mental kaleidoscope. And this is for everyone. This does give you fodder for a future design solution. So I came up with a new way to talk about design to clients. I call it the film strip. And this film strip is more abstract. You understand what the vibe is. You can see there's nature. You can see there's light. You can see there's kinetic energy. And how does that translate to real design? Didn't matter at that point. The client was super excited that he really liked that we were bringing the water and the river into his bar. 2 months later, we went and we said, here's your human experience. This is what it's going to feel like to be in that space. We've brought in the nature. We've brought in the kinetic energy. We got the cedar panels on the wall. It's looking over the river. The views were important. The dewdrop light fixture above the bar. The river movement screen on the left. All of those things tied together with that concept, and we got an immediate approval. Recently, I asked how I'm going to connect the dots with my obsession over feeling space in 3 dimensions. And how am I going to connect that with my parenting? And I was driving down this road, which I do 2 to 4 times a day, and it's so boring. It's so mundane. There's not much to see. But isn't there? So I asked my 2 children if they would put their iPads down, put their books down, and look out the window and ask themselves, what are you seeing that you haven't seen before? Point out 3 things that you haven't seen before. And of course, it started with an initial, ugh, so boring, I don't want to. But then they really got into it. My daughter saw this building that we had never noticed through the evergreens. Yes, it's a utilitarian building, but someone took the time to add a contrasting red stripe to it, and it made it more interesting. My son noticed that this parking lot has green stripes for the parking spaces. Aren't they supposed to be white? I've never seen green stripes. We spent several minutes sitting and talking about why they might be green. I still don't know why. A neighborhood nearby us is under development, and my daughter pointed out that all the houses were very neutral. Someone decided to be different and put a greenhouse in the middle of it. When you're driving through this neighborhood, it feels different. It's not so much about what it looks like, but it feels different. And I imagine that the people that live there get told that too. And lastly, my son noticed this buddy bench sitting on the edge of a park. This is asking for us as humans to take the time to sit down, to bring a friend, and talk about what space feels like, and don't worry so much about what it looks like. Thank you.